Hello, all my subscribers. Go ahead and ignore all the sweat and everything. It's just from the LMFAO Party Rock Anthem dance video I just finished filming. It'll be uploaded pretty soon. As promised, I'm going to go ahead and review all 4 movies in the Daniel Craig era of James Bond. Maybe one day I'll do the other Bonds, but for now I'm just going to focus on Daniel Craig, since No Time to Die will be his final appearance, much like Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow in Black Widow. So I'm going to go ahead and just review them all, and there is really no chronological order with James Bond, so you can review them in whatever order you want, so I'm just going to go in release order. And I guess at the end I might give some of my speculation for No Time to Die, but most of it will be on his movies. And I guess to jot it off right away, my favorite Bonds go Craig, Connery, Moore, Brosnan, Dalton, and Lazenby. So here we are with the Daniel Craig era of James Bond. Well, to keep this video at a digestible length and to not have another over hour-long video that's going to take forever to process, I'm going to try to condense this as best I can and get my points across about Daniel Craig, but still get them there. And yeah, the same will come from my Captain America, Iron Man, Thor one too. I'm still in the process of working on that one, but yeah. So let's go ahead and get right onto it with his debut movie that came out in 2006, right after Die Another Day. And that is Casino Royale, adapted from the novel by Ian Fleming. So yeah, this movie is a reboot of the Bond series, and it's also set at the beginning of his career, right as he's beginning to train to become a 00, and that's the highest rank you can be in the MI6, which is England's equivalent to our US's Secret Service. And yes, this is a toy gun I got that I felt looked close enough to James Bond's Walther PPK, and it is a toy, as you can tell. All that's going to happen if I do this is it's just going to make a little sound. There's nothing even with it. So, yeah. So, full disclosure, this is a fake. So, if you see it, don't be alarmed. It's just a fake. So, I'm going to say that right now. This ain't real. But yeah, it starts off with Bond going after a traitor in the MI6. And boy, is it a really great scene where he's going to go after this guy. And this guy's doubting him, saying, "You're a 00. You don't even have 2 kills. You're supposed to have 2 kills before you become one." And then he's like, "I already got one." And you see this real awesome fight where he's fighting this one. I think he's a terrorist. Maybe he's just a criminal. But you see Bond just drowning him in this toilet. And it is a real great black and white opening scene. So there's that. Then after this, you see the guy pull out his gun. He's getting ready to shoot him. And he's all like, "Oh." And Bond's all like, "Yeah, I know where you keep your gun. It's not that hard." And it's unloaded. And there's a little cut that shows how Bond is like not scared to really kill anyone because of his training being a 00 agent. And it's for the betterment of England, which I guess is probably a similar mantra here in the States for the Secret Service, probably something like for the protection of our president. So, yeah. And probably the Queen and the Prime Minister. I should acknowledge that too. There's also the Prime Minister. So, yeah. And all the other heads of England's Parliament and all that. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's just a real great scene where he frickin' shoots him, and he's just taunting him, and he just like uncaps his gun. He's all like, "Yes, considerably." And it's just a real nice way of him getting into his groove. And then in a variation of the classic gun barrel scene, Bond, his actual kill is connected to the story, where he points his gun at the criminal right as he's about to shoot him. He shoots him, and then it cues Chris Cornell's "You Know My Name." I'm not going to play it because I don't want to get dinged by YouTube copyright, but go ahead and listen to it. It's definitely one of Chris Cornell's best songs. Rest in peace. So yeah, after that, I think I'm just going to highlight the main things about Bond in this movie and just a few standout moments, just so I don't drag the length out in this video. But yeah, there's this really great opening parkour chase scene where Bond goes after this one criminal, and he is just going after him, fighting him, punching him, and he's getting ahead of him. He's falling behind. It's a real great cat and mouse game. And oh gosh, this leads to a real great scene where where he's trying to shoot him, but I think his gun is out of ammo or whatever, and he throws the gun at Bond, and Bond catches it, throws it right back at him, and hits him and knocks him back a bit. And even one scene where Bond just runs through a wall and leads to him eventually catching the criminal, but he's held back by an army that this guy retreated to. And a real great scene where he's holding him as a hostage, and he sees these gas tanks and he fires at it, it explodes, and he gets out, and just a real nice moment of Bond thinking on his feet. And M is in this movie, played once again by Judi Dench, and a real great scene where Bond and her interact, and showing their mother-son relationship that would bloom up until Skyfall. But yeah, after this, the villain of this movie, played by Mads Mikkelsen, Le Chiffre, is a terrorist who is at the end of his rope financially and has used the funds that he gets to like bet on the stock market. So he's playing a real dangerous game and is going to this high stakes poker tournament to earn some more money to have a little more security that Bond is going to go to, and it's going to be one of his first major missions. And there's a couple of other of his associates that Bond goes after, but the only real notable thing to say right there is a real great scene where Bond wins an Aston Martin DBX, and the guy gambles it, and he frickin' steals it from him, and his wife even wants to frickin' cheat on him with him, in a real great scene that subverts the usual Bond thing, where Bond spends some time with the Bond girl, and it's a real great scene where he's on the phone talking to her, not to her, but to the room service at the hotel they're at, and he's like, so how many do you want with this wine? He's like, for one, and then drives away, in a real nice subversion of what usually typically happens in most Bond films, something I definitely really like seeing. Just something about this Bond I like, and he's a lot more relatable too. You see him get shot in later films, and you see that he's not perfect. He stumbles, makes mistakes, and has to pivot and adjust, kind of almost like Indiana Jones, who was inspired by James Bond because Spielberg wanted to make him, but that's another story for another day. But yeah. Then after that, we meet the Bond girl, played by Eva Green, Vesper Lynd. And she's probably my most favorite overall. She's very layered, three-dimensional, complex. She can also go toe-to-toe with Bond, like verbally, and match him, even get ahead of him. And overall, just a really well-written Bond girl. And their romance in this film is really sweet. And when we get to the end, we'll discuss the developments of that and some of the implications it's going to have later on in the Daniel Craig era. But yeah, she was real solid, and there's even a reference to Eve Moneypenny, Bond's former secretary, in it that I really liked. But yeah, guess after that, the next major notable event is the poker game at Casino Royale, with a nice little editing touch I like. There are some crossfades that aren't in a lot of modern movies that I really liked, so credit to the editor and Martin Campbell for throwing those in there. But yeah, it's a real great tense scene where, my God, the editing really makes this poker game real intense. I never thought poker could be so interesting, watching people play. I always thought it was more fun when you're the one playing. But yeah, Bond loses. He gets cleaned out by Le Chiffre at first. But then a CIA agent there to stop him, he gives him his money, says, here, take it. And there's also breaks in between where Bond fights. And it leads to a real nice moment where he has to fight these goons Le Chiffre sent in. And frickin' Vesper, I think she either shoots one of them or she has to help Bond get in a position to kill him. And she is just like, she didn't sign up for it. And she's just bawling, goes to her shower. And a real nice sweet scene where Bond goes in, where she's just in her shower with her clothes on, and Bond goes to join her. And even a moment where he's cleaning off the blood, and he has a slight look on his face, like, kind of maybe, where he's thinking, do I really want to do this? But he's like, yes, of course, I'm here to protect the Queen and the Prime Minister, and I got a mission to complete. But yeah, frickin' just a real solid moment right there. And frickin', oh, after he loses too, I forgot a real nice little subversion of Bond. he has a drink that he likes called a vodka martini, shaken not stirred. I've tried it. Surprisingly, it's not too bad. I would recommend it. It's not too bad. If you can get it, I recommend getting it. It's surprisingly good. But anyway, it's a really nice scene where the bartender's asking, how do you want your martini? He's like, do I look like I give a damn? But yeah, and also later in the game when the sheep is losing, he gets desperate and he tries to poison Bond. And it leads to a real great scene where he is just like moving around like he's drunk and he has to go to his car to get a defibrillator. He doesn't connect it properly, pushes the button, it doesn't do anything, and Vesper actually revives him and saves him. A nice little detail of the Bond girl saving him and just really strengthening their relationship and helps you buy their chemistry. But yeah, after this, Bond ends up beating Le Chiffre and he is a sore fucking loser. Like, oh my gosh. But leads to a real great scene where he kidnaps her and Bond is just driving after him and he sees her on the road and he's like, oh shit, and then he swerves and it leads to this barrel roll in the car, which set a record for like the most rolls with like 7 or 8. So there's that. But yeah, after that, it leads to the scene where Bond wants to get the account number and the password to get the money because Le Chiffre wants it because he's a sore loser and he's also desperate too. So it's not just that. He has his own reason too that's very understandable. He's a really greatly well-written villain. And I like that he's not the leader of the organization like Blofeld, where he's just sitting around petting a cat or whatever. So yeah, he's an underling and he's just trying to make sure he doesn't die. But oh boy, leads to a real brutal scene, and for all my male viewers out there, I don't think I'm going to show an image of it, but I'll just describe it, where he uses a rope, cuts the bottom of a chair down, and wants to interrogate him, and hits Bond right in the batteries. Let's put it that way. Just saying that makes me hurt down there. But yeah, and frickin' Bond, I don't know how he can do it. He just laughs about it. He's like, I'm gonna tell everyone you scratched my balls. And then he's even like, no, hit the other one. He's like, ah! And I am just like, how do you do that? Like, my God, that, oh boy. Ooh, it is a very intense scene, so yeah, but then leads to a real great moment where one of the other underlings named Mr. White comes in, he shoots Le Chiffre, and the third act isn't Bond going after the villain like typical Bond movies. It focuses all on the romance between Bond and Vesper. And a real nice moment where Bond is like thinking, I'm done with the MI6. I want to just live a normal life and be with her. And just some real nice sweet moments of them spending time together. And unfortunately, we find out Vesper was in with an organization called Quantum that will become another more popular one later on. And it leads to a real tragic moment where she has to go give the money in the briefcase. She withdraws it, and it leads to a fight between Bond and the goons of this organization, and Vesper just feels bad about it because she had an Algerian boyfriend, and she had to negotiate with Quantum to let Bond live. And leads to a real intense moment, or not intense, but just shocking moment where afterwards Bond is just distraught because she drowns herself in this collapsing building in Venice, and he's just like done with it. He's like, fine, I'm coming back to the MI6. And he's on the phone with M, and he's all like, right from the line from the book too, he's like, it's over, the bitch is dead. And you just see his usual cold demeanor and why he doesn't really get in long-term relationships and why he isn't really wanting to get married. And yeah, just real freaking like, wow. But even though Bond lost the money and everything, he does go after Mr. White in a real awesome scene where he calls him and he catches him off guard, shoots him in the legs, and he's down. And then he begins to reveal, he says, the name's Bond. James Bond. And throughout the movie, we only heard little hints of the classic James Bond theme. But here, it's played in its full, and it is just absolutely wonderful. So yeah, I guess I'll say this. This was definitely the right way to do a reboot. Kind of like Batman Begins in that sense. And definitely set off this new era of James Bond in a real great way. I just wish the follow-up was a little better and wasn't written during a writer's strike. So guess all I'll say is this is definitely a perfect Bond film. I absolutely love it. It is incredible. Great villain, great bomb girl, great cars. Bond is great. There really isn't much I'd change about this movie. It is absolutely incredible. So I guess we'll go ahead and briefly, because I don't have much to say, discuss the next movie, Quantum of Solace. So yeah, this movie is actually a direct sequel, because most Bond movies, they just take place in the next natural point in the story, but they're not really interconnected. Just a few characters appearing and whatnot. Like Q and Moneypenny in the older films, but they're not in these first two Daniel Craig era. But I guess all I'll say is Quantum, unfortunately, was made way too fast. And you can tell it was made without a script. Even Daniel Craig was frustrated with it afterwards, saying, I'm no longer making a film without a finished script. And, gosh, there isn't really much to really highlight or discuss. The villain, Matthew Green, was very weak, just a typical greedy villain, and there was kind of a underwhelming homage to a classic Bond film from Goldfinger. I guess I can highlight this. Camille, the Bond girl, played by Olga Kurylenko, was real nice. Her and Daniel Craig were great, and Daniel Craig is great as always, but the thing that really holds this movie back is it succumbed to a lot of 2000s action movie tropes that thankfully Casino Royale didn't, and the follow-ups Skyfall and Spectre don't, and I'm hoping No Time to Die will be the same way. But yeah, it has all the quick cut shaky cam stuff where there'll be like one fight where it'll be like this and freaking shoot there, shoot here, punch, kick, and it's just so incoherent, hard to follow. It's like, oh my gosh. But I will admit, the way it gave Bond a little bit of closure with what happened with Vesper, even if it wasn't touched on in later films, was real nice. And yeah, I guess that's all I got to say about Quantum of Solace. So now let's go to my favorite James Bond movie yet, and the one that was my junior prom's theme, Skyfall. So yeah, this movie's directed by Sam Mendes, who directed the next movie also, Spectre. Gonna just cover this right out of the way. The cinematography, editing is just pitch perfect. Like, the cinematographer did Shawshank Redemption behind me. Roger Deakins shot this film, and it was edited by the Christopher Reeve Superman editor, Stuart Baird. And you can just tell, like, them three, Sam Mendes, all three of those men, they brought their A game with this film. Like, the cinematography, there is really not one poor looking shot. Like, it is so well lit, shot, and the action is just great, and the opening is real great too. It's not, the gun barrel was at the end in Quantum of Solace. I forgot to highlight that. And this movie's also came out during the 50-year anniversary of Bond. But it's a real nice scene where Bond is walking up, about ready to go after this guy, and frickin' it's in a dark little shadow to evoke the imagery of the gun barrel. And a real nice scene where we finally get to meet Eve Moneypenny. So, who this time starts off as a field agent before becoming a secretary. And, yeah, frickin' just a real great chase scene where Bond's going after these terrorists with this hard drive that has the identities of many MI6 agents, and leads to a real great motorcycle chase where Bond is chasing after this one goon, and it is just so well shot, clear, you can see everything, the cuts aren't too fast, they're at just the right time, and that's basically everything with the action. But it's not just shot clear, there's also some creativity and ways to make the action a little more visually interesting, especially one scene that I'm going to get into in about a couple minutes later on that is just, wow, the way it used lighting was incredible, and by the hands of a lesser director it would have looked awful and incoherent, but at the hands of Sam Mendes and Stuart Baird and Roger Deakins it looked amazing. But yeah, this leads to a real great train fight where Bond's going after this goon, and they're fighting, and frickin' Bond's trying to shoot him, and it leads to a real classic moment where Bond uses this crane to go into the back of a train. He pulls up his sleeve, and is just all casual about it, all suave. Just a nice little classic Bond moment for Daniel Craig right there. But yeah, the meat of this scene is Bond gets shot in the shoulder by the goon he was chasing, so we see he's not impervious to being shot. And then Eve Moneypenny, ordered by M, is to shoot him, and she ends up missing and hits him, which then leads to the real great opening scene, which was my first ever slow dance song, Skyfall, and sung by Adele, and in all her glory. So Here it is right here. So yeah, anyway, after that real awesome opening scene, we see Bond is, as he says later on, enjoying death, and he's out drinking and having a fun time. But during the midst of all this, the MI6 headquarters are blown up, and they're forced to go undercover in an old World War II bunker. So that was a nice little, neat little visual touch for Bond, and seeing the MI6 in a new location, and due to Bond being out of the field, he has to train again and get back into field quality, and leads to him getting gadgets after he's deemed able to go back into service. Anyway, leads to a real great scene where he meets up with the gadgets expert, Q, played by Ben Whishaw. But yeah, after this, he gives him a gun that only is encoded to his hand, so his fingerprints allow it to fire. If anyone else does, it won't fire. I know the gadgets weren't a whole lot in these Daniel Craig era films, but the ones they got were pretty cool. I guess I'll just sum up real briefly everything I liked. The villain, Silva, wow, he had a great presence, a real great tracking shot in his intro that was incredible. Javier Bardem, as always, killed it, and like he did in No Country for Old Men, he does it again here as Silva, and you really just buy him as a Bond villain. He's always 2 steps ahead of Bond, a real nice cat and mouse game, and Bond and M's relationship is furthered more in this film, which is real nice too. Even some moments where Bond questions M and her decisions. But yeah, this is definitely a film where Bond and the villain is definitely equally great, and not one is really outshining the other, and all the allies work together as well. And the Bond girls are pretty good too, Moneypenny being one of them, and another one named Severine, I believe was her name. Her and Bond have a decent connection when they go to the casino, and Bond goes to find her after taking out her bodyguards who are working with the main villain, Silva. And there's a real great scene where Bond catches him off guard, or at least he thinks, where he uses a communicator inside his shoe to capture him, and he's like, how are you going to catch me all on your own? He's like, how do you think I'm alone? And he pulls out his little communicator, which then leads to Silva with his plan in the interrogation, which definitely mirrors the film that Sam Mendes admitted was an inspiration on this film, and you can see it, that being The Dark Knight. The scene where he's locked up is very much like the Joker. But I feel Sam Mendes still does definitely put his own touch on it, and definitely really like his way of showing this villain and his plan to get purposely caught, where he brings in his laptop to hack into the MI6 from within. And also, due to the recent security issues and these agents having their identities revealed, the MI6 has to face questioning, and Silva has this plan where he's going to disguise himself as a police officer and go murder M right in front of all of them. And leads to a real great scene where Bond is chasing him in the subway, where him and Q interact, and just a real nice scene where they're going down the little slide on an escalator, and Silva launches a frickin' train at Bond, and somehow he gets out of the way just in the nick of time. But yeah, Bond ends up saving M, and he decides to take him to the titular place, Bond's former childhood home, called Skyfall. And what's going to get us there? The classic James Bond car, the Aston Martin DB5. And it leads to a real nice scene where he's considering using the ejector seat to eject M, and she's like, oh, go ahead and do it, see if I care. But yeah, it leads to a real great scene where we get to see his childhood home, and Bond is thinking he can get the upper hand by having an advantage over Silva and his men. Q's gonna leave behind a little digital breadcrumb to follow him, but turns out all the guns and weapons, most of them were sold, so all he really has left is his dad's old hunting rifle and Kincaid's double-barreled shotgun, Kincaid being the gamekeeper. But yeah, frickin' leads to them kind of like setting up booby traps and whatnot, kind of in a Home Alone-esque style, and leads to a real great scene where Silva blasts this song on the frickin' radio of his helicopter where Bond and him are fighting along with Kincaid, and even M gets in on the action using Bond's pistol, and a real great scene where she's shooting, and something I didn't notice, she gets shot in the chest, which, let's go ahead and put a pin on that. But anyway, leads to a real great scene where Kincaid and M are trying to escape, but Silva catches up to him, and Bond has to take out his remaining goons, and in a real nice final showdown, Silva wants to die with M, so he puts his gun right on his head and her head, so they'll both die. But Bond actually gets ahead of Silva for once, has his father's old knife on him, and he throws it right on his back, and you think Silva's gonna frickin' come in and try to get one last hit on Bond, but he ends up dying. But that shot would end up killing M, and this would be the last of Judi Dench's M. But I forgot to highlight, a new M was coming in, played by Lord Voldemort, Ralph Fiennes. But yeah, not much to say other than there's this real nice scene where Bond is kind of having his Batman moment, where he's standing out looking at the London skyline like what Batman does when he is standing on gargoyles with the skyline of Gotham in the background. And it's just a real nice final scene, and leads to Bond getting ready to receive his next mission from the new M, and he's all like, yes, I'm ready to get back with pleasure, which then leads to the gun barrel at the end with a little Bond 50 years, and what a way to celebrate 50 years. This movie is so amazing, and some Bond fans felt that Casino Royale was all way too new and it kind of alienated them, but I gotta say, this movie is like the perfect balance of old and new, bringing in that Dark Knight style approach. And I gotta say, don't casually watch Skyfall. This movie, there's a lot to it, and you gotta pay attention. It's an investment. It's not a movie you can just casually watch. You gotta be in it and invested. But yeah, just about everything is great in this movie, and I guess my prom connection makes me love it just a little more. But yeah, what a way to honor Bond's 50-year anniversary. So here's that final shot I was talking about, and let's go ahead and go into what's going to be the second to last installment in the Daniel Craig era, Spectre. So in what's going to be the second to last film in the Daniel Craig era, Spectre, this movie picks up a little bit after Skyfall. Bond is going on a mission that was assigned by M before she died to go after this one hitman, and let's just say the opening scene in this movie, the tracking shot, wow, absolutely incredible. The way it follows Bond, it is absolutely amazing, and you can tell Sam Mendes wasn't gonna slack in this second film. He wanted to bring back the same great editing, even though he had a new cinematographer and editor. That wasn't going to change, and let's just say that the villainous organization that's here definitely weren't as strong of villains as Silva, but still good. And this movie is nowhere near as bad or as forgettable or as just disappointing as Quantum of Solace. I'm going to say that right now, and at least you can actually see the action, which is a nice touch. But yeah, guess I'm just going to highlight the main things in this film. I like the main Bond elements because this movie wanted to continue the more modern, darker, grittier style of the Daniel Craig era, while also bringing in some aspects of the classic Bond. And I guess the first one I'm gonna get out of the way is the classic Bond villain and organization Spectre. Quantum was in the first two movies. This movie connects all the Daniel Craig era together. And anyway, turns out Silva, Dominic Green, and Lashif were all working under Spectre. Quantum was just a section of Spectre, and the real head of it all has been James Bond's foster brother, Hans Oberhauser, or as he renames himself, Ernest Stavro Blofeld, the classic Bond villain who Dr. Evil is a parody of. And here's probably one of the best villain actors we got working today. Christoph Waltz is him. But yeah, in this, Bond uncovers Spectre, has to kind of work around M's back because M doesn't want him going on this mission because the MI6 are facing their own issues. They feel the 00 program is outdated and want to make it surveillance, but anyway, Christoph Waltz is just great in every scene he's in. He's not in the movie a lot, but boy does he kill the scenes he's in. And Dave Bautista plays a henchman by the name of Mr. Hanks, who is also real great. Kind of like Oddjob. He doesn't really talk much, but you can just tell from his physical acting and his eyes, this guy means business. But yeah, Bond does get some new gadgets too, like an exploding watch and various others, and a new Aston Martin that was released for the film. And guess after that, the only major things I gotta highlight is this real great fight scene in the mountains, and also at Blofeld's lair. But yeah, frickin' also there's this real great train fight where he fights Mr. Hanks along with the Bond girl, Madeline Swan. Who Bond actually begins to feel for, and they have a lot in common. And let's just say the other two Bond girls were more just here to have Bond with his typical getting information and whatnot approach with them, so there's really not much to say. But Monica Bellucci was pretty good for the small role she had in this film. But yeah, Madeline is the main one, and gotta say, they had a really solid relationship, and she definitely could verbally spar with Bond, kind of like Vesper. And I do like the scene also where Bond is being tortured in a chair, and he escapes with his watch and does a kind of classic Bond one-liner where he's like, "It's funny how you run out of time when you really want to do things," and it explodes, leads to a real great scene where Bond just gets this machine gun, mows down all of Blofeld's goons, and frickin' just cleans the floor with them. I also forgot to highlight too, Sam Smith's Writing on the Wall, though definitely not the absolutely incredible song of Skyfall, still pretty solid, and definitely deserved the Oscar it won. And guess after that, the only major thing of note is the climax where Bond faces Blofeld and he taunts him with all the previous characters and everything that's happened over his run, and leads to a real nice scene where M and Moneypenny and Q are assisting him, and M is going after the head of the security surveillance that we find out is frickin' Spectre, and Spectre is also the organization that Mr. White had been working for, and Mr. White ends up killing himself, and that's Madeline's dad, and I guess that also kind of adds to the dynamic of Bond's relationship with her and their natural connection. But yeah, after this final showdown, Bond ends up taking down Blofeld, and a real great scene where he has the choice to kill him or not, but decides he'll spare him and that the MI6 will take care of him. But yeah, it leads to a real nice scene where at the end Bond goes to get the Aston Martin being worked on by Q, and frickin' he drives off with Madeline, which will lead us into No Time to Die. So Gotta say, this movie definitely, though not absolutely incredible like Skyfall, still a solid film. Definitely not as bad as some have made it out to be, but way better than Spectre. I'd say ranking wise, it's definitely third of the Daniel Craig era. It's not the worst. It's still good, still fun to watch, and highly recommend it. Also has the classic gun barrel at the beginning, but yeah, I really enjoy it, and I'd recommend this one. And let's just say that I'd probably give this one an 8 out of 10, and Casino Royale 10, Skyfall 10, frickin' Quantum probably 5 or 6. So those are my rankings of the Daniel Craig era of Bond. And for the last part, I'll just state my speculation for No Time to Die. But yeah, with the upcoming release of No Time to Die, it's going to be the final chapter of the Daniel Craig era of Bond. And Christoph Waltz is confirmed to come back, and boy am I glad Craig is coming back, because I don't know what this movie would be like without him. But anyway, I guess Rami Malek is going to play the new villain, and there's going to be another 00, because I guess Bond is officially out of the MI6, and it's not until his ally from the previous movies, Felix Leiter, comes back to bring him back after this villain, played by Malek, causes some damage. And I guess he's so out of control that even Blofeld has had it with him, and it's looking like maybe Bond and him may have to have an uneasy alliance. But if I know Blofeld, he's probably going to betray him. But yeah, the Bond girl looks pretty nice too. Ana de Armas is in this as a CIA agent, and I've always loved her and everything I've seen her in, so can't wait to see what she's going to be playing. And yeah, overall, the trailers make everything look real nice. It's going to further Bond's relationship with Madeline, which will be real nice. Apparently they got married in between this film and the previous one, so that'll be a nice dynamic. Especially in the past, where Bond got married, but shortly after he did, his wife was killed. So, yeah. Spoiler for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but the movie's 50 years old, so, yeah. And, guess after that, all I gotta say is it's looking like it'll hopefully be what Black Widow was for Scarlett Johansson. A nice send-off, and Daniel Craig can get his final film, put his stamp on the character, because what a run he's had. And for the 5 movies and 15 years, it's been one heck of a run, and he's solidified himself as my favorite Bond, and I can't wait to see No Time to Die. And if I had to say who I want his successor to be, I'm hoping it's either Tom Hardy, maybe Idris Elba, and I think thus far those are my main 2 picks. So yeah, so I hope you enjoy this video, and like, comment, and subscribe, and get to watching the Daniel Craig era of Bond. Peace.